right, excellent. So, hi everybody, welcome to July's Tech Bite. As promised, that's the wrong screen. As promised, I'm going to talk to you guys about the hyper-connected world and how Checkpoint is handling that extended threat landscape. Um, as you saw in my email, we're also then going to talk about the architecture that Checkpoint is pushing these days and why Gartner and others agree. That would be hybrid mesh. We're going to talk about kind of some of the challenges that exist today, and how that relates to this hybrid mesh architecture. And then I'm going to take it home to you guys a little bit. And I'm going to tell you about an offering. We want to talk to all of our customers about this hybrid mesh architecture, and we want to offer a free workshop around it. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Um, but yeah, in short, there's a lot of different things that have been, cropping up over the last few years that alter the threat landscape a little bit. Some of the things on this slide that are more, more noteworthy have to do with AI. So as an example, there's the notion of building ransomware that in the past would take over a week. Our research team, as well as Cyberin, has told us that used to take an average of 9 to 10 days to build out a piece of ransomware. These days, given the prevalence of AI and their ability to quickly turn around, code and code-based projects, that same type of ransomware attack is being developed in 15 minutes, which in turn leads to an incredible amount uh, of enhanced abilities from those threat actors. So, for example, when there's an initial compromise, when they first get access to your network, to actually finding that data and being able to exfiltrate it. It used to be on a scale of days to weeks to months. Nowadays, we're seeing that once a breach has happened, with all the AI scanning that can be done and everything like that, a breach is done within 20 minutes. Additionally, just the scale of attacks has risen. So since over the course of 2025, we saw an additional 150% increase in attacks against assets that you store in your cloud, as well as a general increase in ransomware attacks. Really, the significant part here is that everything is changing in cybersecurity, as it always does, and Checkpoint's goal here is to be in the trenches. We know what it's like to defend those large infrastructure, and we're here to provide you guys these solutions to take up your networks. In 2025, this conversation is changing a little bit, which is why we have uh, a whole new vision and strategy around it. So now I'm going to turn around and start talking about the hybrid mesh architecture. But before we get into hybrid mesh, just for anyone who's not super familiar with Checkpoint, I want to just take a few minutes to go over, Checkpoint's story. So I'm sure for most of you, we've had this conversation before, but it's worth noting, it's worth having this, slide on screen so I can share. Checkpoint's around for over 30 years. We're constantly evolving and innovating. As a bit of cybersecurity trivia, our founder, Gil Shred, was actually the individual who invented stateful inspection technology, which, as you know, is a core technology of firewalls today. Now it's been 30 years since then. Our headquarters are still in Israel, but we have 74 global offices around the world and a team of over 7,000 employees. I think a little over half of that number is in R&D, spread across a couple of different offices. Um, as far as our customer base is concerned, we have well over 100,000 organizations that we protect. We're operating in 182 countries, pretty much anywhere you can have a computer, you can have your checkpoint. And we're a publicly traded company on NASDAQ with a $25 billion market cap. This has really been been the whole scope forever. We in 2024 we were voted as one of the world's best companies in Time Magazine, as well as in Forbes with one of the world's best employers. But this is all a long way of saying we've been around for 30 years, and we have a lot of experience to back up everything I have to say, and the architecture and our products and all that stuff. So Checkpoint's whole thing has always been prevention, not detection. And that, there's lots of different ways to see that within our ethos, but within actual metrics here, we have the Myricom 2025 security report for 0+1 malware attacks. We achieved a 99.9% prevention rate. You can see some of the other vendors that we compete with. I'm not here to we're not here to talk trash in any way, but we performed a little better on 0 day plus ones. Similarly, I want to talk a little bit about, Miracom also did a top 10 common enterprise use cases around AI powered systems. And you can just see the graph here, right? For admin and user experience, we're considered to have a better UX, and for our security efficacy, which is really what we care about, we also, show up strongest there. So to push a little bit over into the idea of the hybrid mesh and hybrid deployment. So this is just the idea that hybrid deployments are the new norm. So it used to just be that we'd exist down here in this bottom right section, talking about your data center, talking about your branch firewalls for different offices. You might include SD-WAN networking to help connect those things. More recently, we would have been talking about IoT, things like your cameras and other smart devices. But it's grown even more than that, right? So in recent days, we've also seen more and more push into the cloud. And in the cloud, you might talk about your cloud segmentation. You might talk about network firewalls that live in the cloud. You might talk about web application firewalls, as well as more things. But again, we've still only covered, a portion of the enterprise. And right, in this case, we're talking about the cloud networking stuff, which is headquartered, your network, as well as the on-premise network, which traditionally, of course, is your network. But now we have to include the entirety of, the workspace, right? That includes your employees and your clients' machines. That includes their email. That includes how their machines connect to the internet. That might include download security, whether that be on a browser or on a client, on some other version of a client. This includes the large language models and other chatbots that people are using today and how they might communicate back. In short, hybrid deployments like this, as dense as this is probably looking pretty familiar to you. And so this idea of having multiple security tools across entirely different parts of the network, using different technologies, communicating in different ways, there's a meaningful amount of fragmentation and crosstalk between those systems, and obviously that gets complicated. So the hybrid mesh architecture, which we're going to get to right now, is instead our way of offering you a more unified approach, where Check Point can offer you all of our same industry-leading security across the entire user base, regardless of how they're connecting, whether that be on-premise in the cloud or at their edge in what we call on this slide the workspace. So essentially, you have it right here. Hybrid mesh is decentralized security and networking architecture where security controls and policy enforcement are embedded directly into the distributed network nodes. So in short, this is just a more wordy way to say it. At its core, what this diagram is trying to show is really just the interconnectivity that the hybrid mesh architecture enables, allowing you to dictate your inspection point for each different use case in your organization, right? So in the previous picture, everything was a little bit segmented, talking back home. In this case, yes, there is the SASE cloud that's connecting everything, but there's, indicated by all these lines, multiple different avenues of connectivity between your machines, between your policy rollouts, everything. The goal here is to ensure performance, cost efficiency, and with Check Point, as always, most importantly, security. So there's some compelling and strong advantages to using hybrid mesh architecture over cloud architecture. For starters, as we've mentioned, security happens where the users and the data are. We're not backhauling all that data through a cloud-only checkpoint or through a VPN. We're not backhauling all that data through your headquarters. That basically allows you to have faster and local enforcement against, on whichever device you're using. In the same vein, there's less deployment or less dependency on that SASE deployment. If, on this left-hand side, if the SASE cloud goes down and you're trying to backhaul, we now have a full outage. On the right-hand side here, if the SASE goes down, yes, all of the big orange circle might not be so present, but you can see all these different devices are interconnected against all each other. So right, if the SASE cloud goes down, branch firewall still has the line to browser security, still has the connection to cloud firewall, still has the connection to everywhere, right? That's at its core, that's the goal. Um, Talking specifically to, the notions of connectivity, hybrid security, and cloud costs. Starting with connectivity, hybrid mesh offers you that agile connectivity across multiple different ways to connect to different devices. That's what we just talked about, right? Whereas the cloud only solution really does force you to backhaul through your cloud SASE in that case. And the cloud SASE solution as a result relies only upon that SASE, whereas when you talk about the hybrid mesh, we're able to connect through multiple different avenues. In terms of the hybrid security, hybrid mesh supports a number of different securities. That's kind of our goal here at Checkpoint, is to create the enforcement point where it lives. So the security can exist in the SASE cloud, in on-premise solution, within the actual cloud networks, on the edge, or even as a service, you can deploy these securities. And lastly, when you need to use cloud only networking, you incur higher costs, right? Of course, as you route more and more traffic through the cloud, you incur higher costs for doing all of that cloud compute. On the flip side, if with the hybrid mesh architecture, if you need to connect uh, through something that could allow, that is secure through the public internet, you of course can make that connection that way. You don't need to route back home. That's again the whole core of the architecture. Um, So this is a little bit more of a dense diagram. It includes more labels, and this is really what we're talking about here. So if what we're looking to achieve at its core is zero trust network access for all users with strategic enforcement points and visibility across the whole network. So as you can see in this image, right, it's functionally the same image. You've got the SASE cloud with all the different potential enforcement points that we had on the last slide, but we've broken it out a little bit. I've included some labels for different branding. For example, all of the workspace stuff is going to be within the uh, Harmony brand name, and then you get your public cloud security through CloudGuard, as well as your web application security through CloudGuard, and then of course Quantum, the brand name for all the on-premise security that you know and love. There's a lot more here, but we wanted to give you guys a little bit of an idea of like what the brand names look like. And I'm gonna go one step deeper into that, and then I'm gonna zoom out into the workshop. So looking at something like this, I hear you guys thinking, how can you do it? How can you enforce all of these different secure connections across different points? And we're gonna talk about that right now. So some of this you've for sure heard from me before, but in order to realize the hybrid mesh architecture, we needed to build what we've affectionately called the Infinity platform. So the Infinity platform has four core building blocks. Uh, the core building blocks are going to be the unified management, which kind of takes is the backend for all of this. And then there's the product names, the Quantum, the Cloud Guard, and the Harmony. Again, the Harmony is for the workspace security, protecting your users and your remote workforce. CloudGuard is for cloud security, as we mentioned before. That includes, gate firewalls and gateways in the cloud, as well as web application firewalls and things of that sort. And then Quantum again is just the on-premise security, traditional firewalls, SD-WAN, DDoS, things like that. And Threat Cloud is the collaborative intelligence hub for all of our products. Gathers and shares threat data, not only within the entire Checkpoint ecosystem, which of course it does, but also external partners, enhancing our overall threat capabilities. And a lot of that data, is shared with those external vendors as well. So similar idea. I just want to, get it at a glance. This is the, those four pieces I just mentioned, but broken out and including additional products here. So really quickly, I mentioned workspace security. There's endpoint. There's clients for the endpoint. There's email security, whether wherever that be hosted. We've talked about SASE a little bit. But yeah, I'll leave this on screen for just a second. You can take any screenshots and reach out to me separately if anything, if you have any questions or anything is of particular interest. One thing worth mentioning is that we've been striving to build our AI tools out within Checkpoint. So I'll mention that a little bit later as well. But in short, we have protections if your users are, if your employees and users are using generative AI and things of that sort. We can, include generative AI within your data loss prevention policy and dictate how your employees are allowed to use different LLMs and what LLMs they're allowed to use, et cetera, et cetera. To get you a screenshot from the portal, because it's one thing to say that it's all in one place and we talk about unified security management, but this is actually a screenshot from our management portal. Um, e- Basically every product that I was just showing you on the previous slide is listed right here as well, and this is this is the portal from which you would do your management. Just to get a little bit more dense with that photo of the four technologies or the four pieces. This kind of gives you an idea that we have the threat cloud, which is the brain. It's getting telemetry from everywhere, right? From all of the products within that Infinity platform, and then they're making accurate preventions. They're giving us the information to enact security. Worth noting that within the threat cloud, there's uh, AI engines being used as well as signatures and all of this big data threat intelligence that we've developed over 30 years of operating and gathering data and learning how things operate and things of that sort. Um, just to mention AI one last time, again, 95 engines exist within that threat cloud. 55 of them are AI based. This allows us to synchronize across all global enforcement points within less than 2 seconds. So if you make a change in your environment, if we learn something out in the world, within 2 seconds, that's been fully synced across your organization. There's also AI agents to help with security operations. There's Copilot, which I might have spoken to some of you about, as well as policy insights and an auditor that he'll help you build your policy and make changes to your policy, within your smart console environment. And there's other pieces to this as well that, of course, we'll happily talk about. One other thing worth noting is that Checkpoint, as a strategic imperative for Checkpoint, we're using what we call an open garden approach. If you haven't heard that term before, in short, what it means is that we want to work with, we want to ensure your security everywhere. And that means working with everyone. So we do integrations, across any and all technologies that we can. Integration with other security vendors to, in order to, whether it be identity providers or SIEM tools or risk and incident response tools. For example, within Harmony Email, we built native integrations for some of the more common SOAR tools. Wow, sorry. As well as allowing any other SIEM tool to work via forwarding logs or anything of that sort. That's the whole idea. We don't want our platform to be a walled garden. We want to, boast more and more integrations. I just saw an update the other day that as of right now, there are 250 distinct integrations within the Infinity platform, and we're always willing to, work to add to that number. Any customers that are using, really anything, we want to make sure we can work with you. So as of right now, you can see a list of some of the more popular ones, right in front of you in this slide, but this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is really just the start. So now I'd love to turn over and start talking about the hybrid mesh architecture a little bit, or hybrid mesh workshop a little bit. So there's a conversation about, how do we get there? Firstly, there's the motivation piece, right? You want to, what might motivate you, a Checkpoint customer, or not even a Checkpoint? What might motivate you, a cybersecurity professional, to be interested in learning more about hybrid mesh architecture? And there's a few different pieces. For starters, we're aligning with industry standards and other market trends. That's why we're doing this, really. We also want to be a piece of the next generation, right? We want to make sure that when we're talking about the new technologies coming down the pipe, whether that be network security on premise in the cloud, wherever it might be, we want to make sure that we're a part of that and make sure that you, our customers, are fully a part of that as well. Of course, that includes the idea that there's multiple different technologies coming from multiple different places, as well as the idea of all these new things in the market like AI and other such things. Another reason to think about this is business drivers, right? You want to optimize your user experience. That's both you, the admin user experience, as well as your employees. who have to use these tools to connect, right? We all remember when we would spin up when you go to connect something and the VPN dies and now you can't do work and you have to wait for the IT ticket to be handled or whatever it is, right? This is the idea that this is something that we can help to reduce complexity for you and your employees, and it'll simplify the administration. And then, of course, if you're able to consolidate a little bit, you might end up finding some cost reduction there. Lastly, and this is the piece that I care most about as well, it's at its core, this is what Checkpoint's all about, is security drivers, right? We want to reduce risk from identity-based attacks, which is why part of why having these enforcement points at the edge is so important, right? You're able to actually handle identity uh, and allow that zero trust type of network because you have the identity handled on the very front, and so there's no need to to allow any trust to any connection automatically, right? You can always verify identity. Um, Additionally, it reduces the risk of data loss, right? We talked about some data loss prevention tools as well as how AI might lean into that, right? What are your employees typing into ChatGPT, for instance? Um, because we have this telemetry across the whole environment, it allows some increased use of that threat intelligence. Not only do we have a robust amount of threat intelligence to share, but once you ingest our products and our integrations with your other products, you really start to learn a lot. There's a lot of intelligence that helps you to really build on the rest of this stuff. And at its core, it's the whole path to a zero trust architecture. That said, you can see all these are connected, and that's the idea. We're not done when we're starting to talk about security. These all iterate on each other. Business drivers have to do with your motivations, of course. Security drivers also lead into those motivations. These are all connected ideas. Um, with all this said, this isn't just Checkpoint talking. I wanted to just quickly mention that Gardner agrees with a lot of our idea here. So on the left-hand side, we talk a little bit about Gardner's definition of hybrid mesh firewall. You can see I inserted our little SASE cloud icon there. But the hybrid mesh firewall, according to Gardner, is a multi-deployment firewall, including hardware and virtual appliances, cloud-based, as well as service models, with a unified management plane. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's what you've seen some of within, the the hybrid mesh architecture includes SASE, includes all your gateways, includes that portal-based management plane. And then the cyber mesh, you know, has mentioned that they'd like to minimize the risk of vendor lock-in and consolidation by using a security mesh architecture as a guideline, which will optimize the mix of platforms and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking about that a little more in depth. Sorry. Damn, I just paused for a second. I want to turn off Teams.
You okay, Zach?
Yeah, I'm just turning off Teams because we're getting pop-ups. I paused the recording, so we should be okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if you were seeing it, but I was getting little pop-ups in the
You're not getting it from my chats, are you? No, okay, you're not.
no. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Just being through, sorry about that. Cool. So we were talking about hybrid mesh. We were talking about how Gardner views the idea of a cyber mesh and a hybrid mesh firewall. And now I'm going to talk to you directly about what the hybrid mesh workshop is. Okay, the animations didn't work, right? That's okay. So anyway, hybrid mesh workshop is an engagement with me and some of our local architects where we'd like to go through your environment and see today kind of how it aligns with those hybrid mesh concepts, some of which we've talked about, some of which we'll talk about more in depth during that engagement. um, of course, we're going to tailor the architecture to your environment, right? It's all going to be, we're going to be asking questions. We're going to be trying to learn from you. Um, and the goal here, there is two things, right? The goal here is to first off map the hybrid mesh architecture and the concepts therein to your environment. Um, and of course, from the Checkpoint perspective, we'd love to see if any of those gaps can be filled with Checkpoint products. But if not, that's not that's, our goal truly is to talk about hybrid mesh architecture. So there are a few things that we're going to get out of this workshop. For starters, you'll understand a lot more about the Checkpoint vision, about this idea of hybrid mesh architecture, and kind of what our roadmap looks like, and how you might be able to get there. We're going to build with you a hybrid mesh blueprint, which we'll start with scoring and deliverables and things like that, and we'll end with potentially having a document and a plan to help you roll out whatever you choose to roll out. Lastly, of course, once we get there, if there's anything that you're interested in using from the Checkpoint perspective, we will help you deploy it. We'll help you POC it. We'll absolutely get you there. But at its core, what we're going to start with is going through an assessment, right? Having a conversation where we talk about, what's your current environment and architecture look like, and what gaps could you have to get to that hybrid mesh architecture. And so there's a whole rubric that I'll be able to show you on the day. But in short, the scoring, we have a scoring of 1 to 5. It's all about how optimized your process is today, right? So right now, there's nothing. Information is undocumented, it's ad hoc, versus capabilities are fully integrated across your environment, automated across different security controls, and continuously improved as necessary, right? So we would sit down, we would discuss this together, and for each different control type, we'd be able to give you a different score. Very slight examples, things like policy and posture, things like operational management, threat intelligence. These are some of the categories. Then we'll provide you with some charts, right? So things like this, I know this is dense, but it's, it'll be in a full report form and everything. But then we'll provide you things like this, right? So, the actual scores for each different enforcement point, against the suggested score, kind of where we wanted to be following a conversation. Another look at something like that is, same idea, but in the star chart. And then I did also mention as deliverables that we'd have some more dense things. So this is an example from one such customer. We built out their entire environment this way. We had it, we have the enforcement points in the center where we're saying, how do we connect to the internet through SASE and through a quantum gateway? We can connect to the internet, but then there's an SD-WAN on one side, there's more gateways on the other side, right? So at a glance, this is the entire network security, really the entire network at a glance. And in this case, you can see we've plugged in, where Checkpoint could exist in that environment, but also there's a section up at the top for anything OpenGarden, for other plugins, things like that. And this can be structured, this can visually look however you want, but it can also be structured however you want. So, right, in your case, you're not necessarily going to have Checkpoint across every single spot. If we're talking about your dedicated data center and you're not using a Checkpoint gateway, this would not say Checkpoint. The goal here is to create an environment diagram that works for you. And of course, I'll tell you where the Checkpoint stuff belongs, but that's quite all right. It's not, this is a relatively agnostic exercise, just trying to talk about the idea of a hybrid mesh and how that architecture can suit you. To get one step deeper, I'll show you the same exact idea, but using a control plane architecture. And this is where it starts to get really deep. And this is the kind of thing that if you want to build out for yourself, I would love to do that with you, right? So obviously, as you can see, same idea as the prior slide, just a little bit more involved, right? We talk about all the different cyber plugins and then have, where they connect. We include other stuff on the left for that OpenGarden. And then this is really all about, the different control planes and how we manage different pieces of that environment. So yeah, in short, as we mentioned, the whole idea is that we want to have a workshop where we can go through the hybrid mesh and make sure that the hybrid mesh is as adopted as you want it to be within your environment. And there are a lot of reasons, as you mentioned, why hybrid mesh is a valuable concept. So yeah, I recognize that there's not going to be any questions today, but if we follow up with any, I'm always here. We're always happy to schedule a call where we can start going through, either start the workshop right up or talked about any specific products, anything you guys might like. So yeah, I guess thanks again for your time, and we'll catch you on the next one.